Hey, how's it going?
We'll get started. Good evening, everybody. This is the March 17th meeting of the Ordinance Committee. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody watching and listening. Um, in attendance, we have Councilmember Colin Hostin, Councilmember Richard Diligent, who's also the Vice Chair, Council Woman Ann Winterstrand, Council President Josh Goldstein, and Councilmember Jesse Buccalow. And that was in the order that I saw. So
I'll let you
we'll
know
move.
when Johan pops on.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. We don't have any public hearings scheduled today, but we will move to public participation and comment related to agenda items.
All right. So just for the record, I received no emails in advance of any of the items that are on the agenda for this meeting. And right now, I'm not seeing any attendees in our waiting room here.
Okay. So since we have none, we'll move on to acceptance of the minutes of our February 17th meeting, regular
Vanessa
meeting.
just joined, just for the record. Vanessa
Okay,
Valadares.
thank you. Welcome.
Mhm. Yep.
So I'll take a motion to accept the minutes from our regular meeting from February 17th.
So moved.
Thank you, Colin. Any corrections or comments that we need?
Just one that I saw, Jalen, and that is on page three, maybe one, two, three, four, fifth paragraph. It starts with suggested. And my recollection is that was Colin's suggestion, that little thing. So I don't know if you want to add Colin's name or if he wants to take credit for it. But I think that thing about modeling the ordinance on Office of Policy Management and federal Congress levels, I think that was a comment from Colin.
It was from Colin.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yes,
Rich.
So I had the
I
same correction.
I saw that too, and I had made a comment before Colin about considering like time allocation of
Yes.
staff, and I didn't see that anywhere in the notes.
Okay. Was that before Jesse or after?
I think it was before Colin.
Okay. Let me just make that. Let me just make a brief note. Um,
Councilmember Lopez is actually he's in the attendees too.
okay. Oh, he is. Hold on one second. Let me transfer him over. Thank you. I'm promoting him to panelist at 7:03. He should be coming over shortly.
Thank you. Any other corrections or comments? Councilmember Lopez, we're just on our minutes from our February 17th meeting.
Jesse, what'd you say? You discussed the impact on staff and and allocation of resources?
Councilmember Buccalow,
I believe he's on mute.
you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm getting situated over here. But I'll be on camera soon. So I said I had made a suggestion around adding in some verbiage around staff time allocation as an additional financial impact. Um, so it was more just like an idea to continue to explore and a suggestion around that.
Staff time.
And there was also now I'm recollecting. There was also a comment that I made around like staff anticipating future staff capacity as it relates to that too.
And future staff capacity. Okay, I got the general idea. I'll play with the language to make sure it's as close to what you're saying as possible.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments or corrections? Hearing none. Do we need to take another motion for the amendments or
Yeah, I
we're
would
good?
move to approve them as amended.
Yeah, so make them, I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes, from our February 17th meeting as amended.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? And That passes. Thanks a lot. And now we'll move on to discussion and a vote on the new ordinance of financial disclosures and the impact ordinance.
I will put that up in a second, so that everyone can see it.
Thank you.
Okay, here it comes. Sharing.
All right. Thanks a lot. So everybody can see that. And just from a note from our minutes, I did see just even though it wasn't in the minutes, there is let me just had it up on my screen to scroll down. There is a portion of a mention of potential staffing and capital projects. I believe it's on the second page here. But just as a refresher, start a discussion. This is something that Councilwoman Ears really spearheaded. She did a lot of research and helped draft. Like this is the version that Attorney Candela had worked on, kind of made it clean up, fished out some things, and made it more feasible to Norwalk. But yeah, under contents of the fiscal impact statement, as I mentioned, with Jesse, like yours, under 3, it says statement on any potential impacts on of the ordinance on staffing, operations, and capital expenditures in the upcoming fiscal year. So it does address that. But I'll open up the discussion, and I see Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, do we have to formally make a motion to discuss this, or?
I was gonna see if everybody feels comfortable. I was gonna see how we felt, if we had anything to
Oh,
iron
okay, okay,
out.
okay.
And then if we do, then we'll move it to
Public hearing.
sorry, public hearing. Thank you,
Okay,
Brian.
okay, yeah, I just have a couple of comments. Oh, first of all, thanks, Brian. I mean, this is a strong, well-structured ordinance. I think that aligns with best practices. The only few possible ideas that I jotted here for the group to consider is on section 4, number 1. What if we extend the projections to go out to maybe 3 to 5 years? Because I know a lot of policies that are multi-year a lot of policies that have multi-year impacts. And I think that maybe short-term fiscal notes could possibly underestimate all the costs. And that's the first thing. And then let's say, so that's the first one. I have other thoughts or ideas, but that's like the first one I wanted to propose.
Any other comments or questions on that?
There are ordinances that are similar to this in other jurisdictions that talk about up to 5 years or whatever it might be. What I would say to you is how far the projection goes is fine. It could be 1 year, it could be more. What you guys all have the power to do at some point is, if an ordinance is passed and there's feedback that there's not enough staffing, or there's not enough money, or it's more expensive or less expensive than thought, you could always come back and amend this to provide more. You could always amend the ordinance to provide more because it's less than what you thought, or pull back on it because it's too much financially or too much for staff. You can make amendments to an ordinance based on the financial impacts ordinance not being as accurate as you would have hoped.
Okay, thank you. That's
There
helpful.
are remedies to it not being as accurate as you would want.
And
Gotcha. Okay.
another point to that's like kind of a backup in section 6, where the effects of inaccuracies, any mistakes, it doesn't affect the validity of the legislation. And I think that's important, because some of these financial impact statements are kind of be a guess, because we really don't know. It's like a projection. And I think that that's important, because we don't want to invalidate a good ordinance just because the financial impact statement might be just wrong, just because of, like, we just didn't know. So President Goldstein.
A couple quick thoughts here, and I was looking at this earlier when Brian, thank you, sent it over the weekend. One, on section 3D, where it says, following the public hearing, any city council member who intends to present a significant amendment to the ordinance. I don't know what significant amendment means.
Yeah.
And I think we only have one definition in this ordinance. I think something we may want to kick around is what we're actually talking about here.
Yep.
Because I could see a whole lot of mishegas and sort of playing around by saying, essentially slowing down an ordinance's process or progress by saying, oh, I'm going to present this significant amendment, which just makes it harder to pass an ordinance. So
Mhm.
I'm concerned about how this could be used and as a method to stymie an ordinance. Um,
And
so I,
just to piggyback on what Josh was saying and what I said earlier, I added this language in because I think it's easier to remove things than it is to add it later on. I think that the concern here, the lack of concern here would be that an ordinance can be amended at any time. So if something's not working, I'm not sure we need this language about significant amendments because
yeah,
if someone makes an amendment, whether it's significant amendment or not, it could be something that changes what the ordinance says, what it does, the requirements, the staffing, and it might be one word, it might be whatever. And if
hmm
something's not working, we can always go back and change it. So if there are changes to the ordinance and everyone's okay with it, and staffing doesn't seem to have an issue with it, and it becomes an issue, we can always go back and change it. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
no, I just think that um I don't know. I don't like this section D. I mean, just the first sentence is really what I'm talking about. Um, so I haven't thought of the best way to revise this, and Brian, I hear where you're coming from, but that does concern me.
Hmm.
Um, come back to me later, but that stood out to me. That was my one big note. So,
And I mean, I would tell you that this is not, I think in terms of what we're trying to do here, that's one of the least important things. Again, easy to remove something than to add something later on. The real purpose of this is when we're doing something that's amending an ordinance or creating a new ordinance is to get involvement from the departments to find out
mhm.
what their suggestions are, what they think works for them, and how they think it's going to affect them financially, and then have them put something in writing to us so that the city council is not driving blind as to the impact. I think that's the major thing, and I think that's not 3D. So 3D is not necessary. If that's going to be a problem, we could always remove it because ordinances can be amended.
Yep.
Thank you. And then I'm gonna go, just so everybody gets a turn, I'm gonna go, Councilman Hostin, Councilmember Winterstrand, Councilmember Dillinger, and then I'm gonna come back to you, Councilmember Lopez. But I see you. I just want to go give everybody a chance.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, one of the comments I was going to make about that section D, and I think it's related to what Councilmember Goldstein was talking about, is um, the fact is that sometimes in vigorous debate, an amendment comes up on the floor, and there's not necessarily that much time, to go get a new financial impact statement. And I think, we want to encourage that kind of discussion and back and forth. The suggestion I was going to make to, kind of address that was to add a line in D that says, it, the requirement for a new fiscal impact statement uh, for an amendment, significant or otherwise, can be obviated by a two-thirds vote of the council. So if it's an amendment that the council is largely in favor of, I think we should allow it to go through. That's just a suggestion. The other thing I wanted to just kind of point out, I think they're relatively minor. And by the way, I echo the appreciation for the work that Attorney Kendall and others have put on into this. Um, in section B,
Of 4B or
sorry,
3B, I mean.
section 3B, yes.
Yep. Okay.
I would say we would want to, sorry, in section 3A, um, we have like explaining the reason or reasons with the S in parentheses that a fiscal statement may not be needed. I think we should also do that parenthetical S for city department because sometimes an ordinance affects more than one city department. I'm thinking
Mm,
specifically of the noise ordinance that affects, for example, the police and the health department. And
yep.
so, I think we might want to consider if it affects more than one department, which department might be responsible for creating the impact statement, or whether it be both.
Hmm.
Another question I have is if the financial impact statement affects the finance department. We have here that the chief financial officer is the or the designee the entity responsible for reviewing these impact statements. But what if it's their own department? Is there a way that there's some oversight there as well? And yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you, thank you, Councilman Hodgson. That's a good point. Um, Council member, anything on that, Brian? Any ideas on that or anybody? Just so we that last comment on the CFO and the financial
Um,
department.
it's a good question. You probably don't want to go out and get someone independent to do that because that's going to cost money. And
I think it's the same the thing because this how do they handle like when it comes to like the budget because like the budget goes through like every department submits it to the CFO and the finance department. Who does the finance department submit it to? That might be the workaround
isn't
there.
it
I mean,
isn't it the BET?
they might, but there's the step
Yeah.
like before like with every other department, they send it to the CFO first, and then after the CFO, then it goes to the BET. But I mean the BET is that oversight there, but yeah, I was just thinking that way. But that's a good question. Maybe not an answer tonight, but that was a good comment.
The
I
only
didn't
thing I
think of
could
that.
think of off the top of my head is that if it is let's say it's the finance department and no other department is being impacted, that perhaps the amended ordinance be, put through, not a trial run, but have it revisited a year out to see like what were the actual costs. Have the department come back and show what are the hard costs that were as a result of the ordinance over the period of a year and how accurate it is. And that would be obviously a limited situation to the finance department. Because we don't have anyone else other than I mean, because the only thing I could think of is controller, but they're under finance. So
Hmm. Thank you. And then Council Member Winterstrand.
Yeah, I want to thank, I know Councilwoman Ayers is not here. I want to thank her again for bringing this forward and for Attorney Candela for the work on the ordinance. Um, I don't know if we need language, like I'm looking at section 3. Um, I believe it's in A and B. There's language about the circumstances in which no fiscal impact statement could be prepared. But in a situation where there's a revision to an ordinance, an existing ordinance, and there really is no financial impact, in other words, there's an existing framework for reinforcement or, I'm just wondering, do we need language for that, or does that cut the language like in 3A? A written statement from the appropriate city department explaining the reason that no fiscal impact statement could be prepared. It's a little different than there's no financial impact to a proposed revision. I just don't see language in the ordinance that would, um,
yeah, I mean, I guess the response would be that let's just say let's say it's Public Works that's the impacted department, and let's say that the amendment or the new ordinance, let's say the amended ordinance is just changing something, and it's not going to, it's just clarifying an
right.
unclear statement, and it's not changing what they do, how they do it, or how often they do it. A simple one sentence from Vanessa, or or the chief of public works could say, there is no impact here. We're already doing the work. Something as simple as that.
Right. It could be that simple. And then would it then need review from the CFO? Would it have to go through that same
I don't
sort of
believe so.
chain?
I don't believe so, but we could put that, I mean, if the department is saying that there's no fiscal impact, then why would the CFO get involved? My opinion would be that the CFO would get involved if the department is
Right.
saying, yes, there's a fiscal impact, yes, there's going to be more man hours, or staffing issues that are going to be caused as a result of this ask or this new requirement. But just kind of, that's my 2 cents.
Okay. So we wouldn't really need any additional language for that. It's covered.
I think the CFO is covering the city's expenses and exposure if we're saying that the ordinance is gonna be causing an impact on staffing or costs or expenditures. I think that's what we're trying to make sure here, is that we're not green lighting something and not knowing what the potential exposure could be later on down the road.
Right.
And for
Okay.
example, if there is, for example, a letter from a department saying there is no financial impact or fiscal impact, and then they come back 3 months later and say there is, they could
Right.
provide us with an updated one, and then we can make appropriate changes to the ordinance if that's what the city council wants to, or they say, you know what, we're doing good work, we like this, we're okay with the expense. Thank you for letting us know there is an expense. We could always amend a fiscal impact statement to more better show the public and their elected officials as to what the true exposure is if necessary.
Right. But for transparency, we, want to have a statement from a department head saying there's no foreseen financial impact to like a revision to something that's a clarification of an
Right.
ordinance.
Right. So, if we're changing, for example, the membership of the Board of Ethics, for example, or something like that, the Board of Ethics or staff, which is me, could write a simple letter saying, all we're trying to do is change definitional language or change the membership here. It's not going to cost any extra money, things of that nature. That's another example of another change, not just picking on DPW here, just trying to give another
Right.
example.
And that would be on record somewhere.
Yeah, I think we would, we could certainly, I believe if I recall correctly, the fiscal impact statement has to be done before the public hearing, so we could attach the fiscal impact statement as part of the public hearing backup documentation to the ordinance for the elected officials and the residents of the city of Norwalk to have at their fingertips when it's being discussed.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilmember Dillinger.
Yeah, I didn't get into the weeds on the language of this thing, but way back at the beginning of the month, I just wanted to know what the downside was. So I did a little Google kind of AI thing, and they made a statement about some of the disadvantages include, high administrative burdens, technical limitations, risk of exclusionary zoning, which concerned me. And I guess my main question and concern, I like what Brian said earlier about, I mean, I'm just a little worried about dropping this on a lot of departments. So I'm kind of thinking about the administrative burden in particular and some other things. Brian, you kind of mentioned that we would try to, I think if I heard you right, try to pilot this in some way, or at least get some input from some departments before we kind of finalize this. I just wanted to.
Yeah. So, I think the one thing with this ordinance would be that it potentially could slow down, where there is an impact, not where there's not an impact, but where there is an impact and you're asking a department to run an analysis as to what the impact on, let's say, the blight office, we're amending the blight lien, the blight enforcement, and they're going to need more blight officers. They're going to have to do an analysis of how many more officers are going to take, how many hours are we talking about, things of that nature. That could take some time. It could slow down the public hearing. But the idea would be, before an ordinance is going to be put in front of the ordinance committee, to part of this plan would be to get it out in front of the department and say, this is what we're thinking about. We want to get your thoughts, or it's easier if they come to us. But the point is to get the departments involved early so that they can start thinking about, are there impacts, and if there are, have them start running the numbers so that you guys have an idea before it comes to us. Because if they come back and say, "Hey, you want to do X, and X is going to cost $300,000 based on what you want," that might be a no-go. It might say we're not going to go forward with this, or we're going to severely limit what we're trying to do here. The point is to get them involved early so that they're not finding out about this, while we're in the midst of trying to revise an ordinance.
Yeah, and just in terms of the time frame or how you would see this kind of going forward, I mean, would this start for the ordinances that come up starting, I don't know, the fall, or what's the
Yeah,
time frame?
it
We
was
we
and
could make
it's
this effective whenever you wanted. We could say 10 days after adoption. We could say this is not going to take place or take effect until January 1 of the following year, or whatever date you want, to let the departments know that this is coming. It's not at a public hearing yet. This seems like there's a little bit more work to be done on it from what I'm gathering from everybody. So it's certainly something that we could, reach out to department heads, perhaps provide them with an updated draft of this for them to take a look at it and, say, like, is it something that they can do easily? Is this something that's going to take them a long period of time?
Well, that
That's
would,
another thing.
and that's the kind of thing. I mean, for me, I just would be, I'd feel better about it if we kind of had that kind of opportunity to get some input from the departments. So,
We could certainly
and I
reach out to them with a draft. I could send it out to the department heads, all the cabinet level positions, and say, please give us your feedback.
yeah,
And
okay.
I the thing about it too, the whole reasoning behind this, the council member Ayers, the reason why she brought this up is because when we do pass ordinances, it puts a strain on departments sometimes, on sometimes. We're putting things in and we're saying that this ordinance we have to do something, like say with vape, like the Department of Health or whatever is creating it's something that we believe in, but it's creating more workload for these departments.
And
And
that's
when we
my
don't,
concern. Yeah, and that's my concern exactly, Jaden. Yeah.
no, and I mean, even without the financial impact, we're creating that work when we make an ordinance. And without the financial impact, there's no way for us to say how much it's going to cost. And then we come around budget season, and then these departments are asking for more money because they need more staff or they need different things. And then whereas the council like, hey, we're trying to keep the budget as low as possible, and we're not supporting the departments as possible. So I think once it's going and once we pass ordinances, I think this will help us to pass ordinances that actually assist it or puts us in the mind as a council to know that hey, next fiscal year we're already looking at we're going to have to hire X amount of people and different things because a lot of times we say and we create this work for the staff. However, once it comes around budget time, we aren't really funding in that way, and we all know the constraints of the budget. But I think that this really helps put in mind when we pass these ordinances, how much it's going to cost us. And it really gives us an educated vote so that once it comes back to January or even September around budget time, we know that we passed this ordinance and we ask for this extra work from these departments. So I think it will create more of administrative work, but I think in the long run, it's going to support these departments because we're going to know the financial impact or at least have a nice estimate of the financial impact on these departments. And then we know that we have to fund it to make sure that we could enforce the ordinances that we pass.
A lot of the ordinances that I've experienced, for the most part, I'd say a majority of them have come through departments seeking out one of you elected officials and saying we'd really like this. I'd say the last example was really the vape shop ordinance with the police. They were
Mm-hmm.
basically asking for help and trying to monitor the situation. They're already doing the work anyway. They have to enforce these things, the illegal drugs and everything like that, and making sure that everyone is doing this properly. And so they were, seeking our help. So that would be a willing partner, especially when a department is seeking something, a change to the ordinance. They're going to be a willing partner, and we just need them to provide us with clear guidance as to what the impact financially and people power wise it's going to be for them, staffing wise.
And again on the vaping, Councilmember Lopez and they did a lot of great work on that. And I think there was some concessions about the enforcement and not being like the town clerk's office or being they found the right department that can handle the workload with the least amount of impact. So this has been happening in some way, but this is kind of formalizing it. But it's definitely a good point. on that. So I'll go to Councilmember Buccalo and then Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I really appreciate the point that Councilmember Dillinger brought up. I think we should absolutely send this out to the department heads and get their feedback about just whether this process makes sense or, are we asking for too much in a certain area or how can we better um, clarify things. And that's where my comment from last session that we have that I'll bring up again, and it's kind of an open question to the rest of the council members here. It's like when I look at staffing or the impact of staffing, I think it's up for interpretation. So like one could just think it's additional staff members or I need to bring in new staff. But I also think about, Brian, you brought up like all the examples of hours, workload. Like I don't know how everyone's interpreting that. And so like when I think of staffing impact, I'm thinking about workload capacity, sustainability, or whether it's even can be like the feasibility of it being implemented. And so I don't know whether we can just add a little like tweak to the language about whether the staffing impact, whether it can be absorbed with existing capacity or it requires additional staff, or we can like, and I know some of these ordinances, it'll be hard to estimate what that workload or hours look like, but I just think any additional detail we can get about that. And I just don't know how department heads are going to really like interpret that language and how deep they're going to go without, a little bit further clarity or guidance. So I'm curious what other council members think of that, or if maybe I'm just overthinking it here. And I also don't want to add an additional burden to the original point to make it too burdensome to actually create, but I'm just thinking about
Well,
the
I mean,
details.
Jesse, just to let you know, like when we were doing the vape stuff, the health department basically told us that they did not have the staffing to do this. Um, I believe that was why the city clerk's office took over the licensing portion. So, I mean, there's an example right there of what Josh has said in the past that we've done this. We're doing this already informally, and we're just trying to formalize it. I think we do have. I think we have honest people that are running these departments that are going to tell us we can do this or we can't do this. The other thing I would mention, not only the impact on staffing, but also, in terms of job descriptions, is by asking for an ordinance. Is there somebody that is it in their job description, or is a job description have to be reworded or reworked in order to add something like that in? Just another thought.
Mhm.
Thank you. Anybody had any other comments on Councilmember Buccalo's open question?
Um, I think my overall kind of thinking about this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, is that it's going to, as it says here, provide some guidance to council members as we, review and debate potential new ordinances or amended ordinances. But I think it's fair to say, and this is what I'm thinking of it at least, is that these fiscal impact statements are going to. I wouldn't expect a ton of accuracy. As Attorney Candela said, we would, it'd be interesting to come back a year later for any department and kind of see what the actuals turned out to be.
Mm.
I would use these impact statements as guides, and certainly would not try to give them too much weight in making a decision because I think there's just too much flux. There's just too much speculation and estimation. I think we need to do it and we need to do it in a sort of more formalized way than we've been doing it. But I wouldn't want to over-engineer these to then give the false impression that these are reliably accurate documents.
And that's why they're not, I mean, that's why we put in the language that they're not binding. They're not binding I mean, you guys can get the fiscal impact statements and look at them and say, oh, they could say, oh, there's no impact whatsoever. And you guys could say, we're still not passing it. We think that there's going to be, or there's huge fiscal impacts. And you're like, we don't care. We think that this is an important work that we're doing. So it's a guide, as Colin said, it's a guide for you. And it's something that, if there's a fiscal impact statement, if this happens and one is submitted and an ordinance is passed, you can get feedback. You can go to the department and say, "We'd like an update. Please come in and update us on how it's gone, how what we've asked you to do, or what you've asked us to empower you to do. How has it impacted you in the last year, financially, staffing wise? Please let us know." And that could lead to revisions or amendments of that ordinance because of that feedback, a year later, 2 years later, whatever it might be.
Thank you. And then Councilmember Lopez, thank you for reading.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. So 5 thoughts here. What if we add to section 4, number 1, in the upcoming fiscal year and where feasible for at least three subsequent fiscal years? That's the first point. And the second point to Councilmember Goldstein's concern about the possible ambiguity surrounding the term significant amendment. Could we possibly define to some extent what we mean by significant amendment in this ordinance? Number 3, I don't know if this should be codified in the ordinance, but what if we require use of like a standardized guideline for how departments actually figure out what the possible impact is going to be? I mean, this is something that maybe the CFO can put together. So there's a standard way on how departments actually do this. So they're not kind of just coming up with their own way or doing it their own way, but something that's kind of uniform. The fourth thing is, should we require these amendments, I'm sorry, not these amendments, but these publications to be in the public domain attached to agenda documents, possibly, if it's relevant? And the last thing, to Councilmember Hostin's point, should we possibly add language such as something related to emergency waiver clause in case that something is really time sensitive, it has to go through? So those are my thoughts for the group.
Just in answering one of yours, Johan, so a couple of them. So we can, in terms of 4A1 or whatever, we can say that they have to extend projections for as long as you want, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the answer is. As it pertains to the significant amendment, thinking about it more as Josh raised the issue, it's probably more of a headache, and probably something that could be used to block legislation. If somebody wants to propose an amendment, it shouldn't prevent the city council members from voting on the original or the amendment. And we could certainly have departments, relevant departments say, we can provide you with an analysis in that time period, or we can't, and we think that there's either going to be an impact or not be an impact, and that's for the city council to decide. As it pertains to the fiscal impact statement, it should absolutely be public. It should be attached to the backup materials on the ordinance committee agenda when it goes to if said ordinance goes to city council for its vote. Behind that ordinance should be attached to it the fiscal impact statement from the department or departments that are making the comments about how it will impact staffing, money, or that there won't be any. Those things should absolutely be in the public domain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And so what about possibly including language to standardize the way these impact statements are put together? Is that something that could just be done internally with the city, not really have to be codified?
That could be done internally. I think that probably what will happen is if and when this is passed, that departments will probably be asked to provide information. It'll probably be staffing, money. Certain questions will be asked. Probably will have to require meetings as well. And after a while, you'll see, well, we like the way that one particular department does it, or we like a combination of the way 2 departments have done this. And then you could say, this is, and you could remove the relevant language and say, these are the topics that we want you to cover. And if it's not applicable, just say not applicable. And if you think there's something that's not there that should be there, please add it under miscellaneous or something like that. We can work on trying to standardize the form as best we can, but that might be a little bit difficult because of all the varying things that you guys deal with.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilmember Buccalo?
Yeah, I want to respond to, I thought, to Councilmember Lopez's suggestion around that. I think that's a really good idea and a good question to ask when we send this out. I do think there should be some type of standardized, a very high level version that maybe we can create as just like a template, and get feedback ahead of it, ahead of time, I think, and try to, we can definitely reshape it in a year, or it can look different depending on the department, Brian, that you brought up. But I do think it's worth asking for feedback on that ahead of time versus kind of reacting to something and giving feedback later on once this ordinance is passed. And yeah.
And I'm sorry, Jesse. I mean, so and going back to what you just said and what Jalen said in the past, like if an ordinance is passed and then there's a fiscal impact statement and it's inaccurate, it's just not what the department thought. It behooves the department to not speak up and say something because, like Jalen said, when it comes budget time and they're asking for more money, everyone's going to say, "Well, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you come back and tell us that there were these issues? You should have told us. We could have made amendments, or we could have worked with you, or had knowledge of this ahead of time." So if something is passed and there's an impact or not an impact, and then it changes, the department should be, advised, please reach out to staff or the ordinance chair or the relevant group of people as soon as possible to let them know so that changes can be made if necessary. Much like we did with the reapportionment voting districts, where we got feedback and we changed them immediately because there were issues, whatever the issues were. We had to make multiple amendments to that thing to get it done so that it could be used for the voting elections when in a timely fashion. So that was a good example of getting feedback and changing things on the fly.
And I think it might be good just because ordinance, even though we could make amendments, it takes some work. I think you might want to leave this eternal, and then because it could possibly change with CFOs. The CFO might want it a different way since they're the ones that's going to be reviewing it, and submit it to a council. So I think that like that'll be part of when we reach out to department heads and the CFO. They might have a standard way that they want to do it, but then if you get a new CFO, they might have wanted a different way, and that might just be better to take care of internally rather than in the ordinance. Any other questions or comments on this particular one? We definitely have some work to do on this, so we'll bring it back. But any other questions or comments before we move on?
I'm good.
All right, hearing none. Thanks, Brian, and thanks everybody for your thoughts.
Yep.
We'll work
No,
on
thank
this
you. These are
and
good. These are
send it
good
out.
comments. We'll get working on this.
All right.
Sorry, just one. My bad.
No
Uh,
problem.
um, in terms of when it takes effect, I think, as Attorney Kendall said, it could be whenever. I think 10 days is too short. I would certainly recommend more time for departments to get used to having to do this, and maybe January 1 makes sense depending on when we actually get this going.
And Colin, that's a really good point. I think that when we passed vape, we gave it was like a 3 or 4 month grace period, and quite honestly, what we could do is we could say, all right, it's going to be if this were to be passed, let's just say by June 1st. We could say to everyone, it's not going to go into effect until January 1. But in the intervening 5 or 6 months, anytime we're passing an ordinance, we want the departments to go through this process so that they can figure out how much time it's going to take. We can work out the kinks so that when we get going on January 1, perhaps it's in a little bit better shape than what it was at the beginning.
Makes sense.
Yep. Good point.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we'll move on to item
BET and City
BT.
Council.
So with this one, this is another item B, discuss and vote on a new ordinance. City council member being appointed as an ex officio member of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. This one is a short one. Again, we'll have just a brief comment. Then we'll see where we stand. If we're ready to move it, then we will. So this is one that we talked about. We did pass it. This went through the charter revision. And in the charter revision, it gave us the ability to create this ordinance. And this is the ordinance putting an ex officio member on the city council. The one thing that I had that I kind of thought, and I think Council Member Hostin brought it up at our last meeting, was I don't think that we really needed an alternate. I think if that member couldn't make it to the meeting, they just didn't make it to the meeting. I think that might be complicating it. But I did want to leave that up to discussion. So I don't know how everybody feels about that one, or if anybody had any questions or comments.
Let me get it off. I'll stop sharing the screen so everyone can see if someone's raising their hand.
Councilman Hostin?
Yeah, I think I don't have any objection to having an alternate. I think it kind of reflects the way we have instituted vice chairs for our committees, and so really kind of creates like a just a little fallback just in case somebody really has an issue that does not allow them to take part fully. And the only other comment I had was that I'm not sure about a 1 year term. I just think the term should be 2 years, especially as the council goes to 4 year term. Uh, just because I think that um, the sort of curve up into being really effective in that role may take a few meetings, and we would want somebody to like be able to really kind of grow into it. Um, and maybe now I'm just thinking in real time, maybe if there is like this idea of an alternate, it's that there are staggered terms so that somebody serves for 2 years, but 1 year in, there is somebody appointed as the alternate for 2 years, and then that becomes kind of a staggered thing. But that may be too complicated.
Yeah, it might be complicated. Then it has to fall in line with the election, because even with the 4 year term, the person who's for the 2 year term, they might not get reelected. Yeah, so
Correct.
Councilmember Winterstream?
Yeah, I actually wanted to hear more from you, Councilman C, just what you anticipate would be the complicating factors of having an alternate. Because I could see the benefit to it.
Yeah, I'm kind of fine. We had a discussion at our last meeting, kind of like not to complicate it with like trying to find two people, but I'm it's not really like I'm hard on either way. I'm fine with it, but like in our last conversation, it was just that did come up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we do this kind of like Councilmember Hodgson said, it kind of brought it up to um like how we did with the vice chairs and
Yeah. Because I think that having an alternate, especially because this is, we talked about how whoever it is that's appointed to this role, we're probably going to be reducing their committee work in other ways, right? So that there's an equitable distribution of work, but it's still going to be, um, it's going to be a different kind of role than being in a committee of the city council. And in that sense, I think an alternate could be beneficial
yeah, and
as
it's
a
definitely, and I
system.
think it's a reminder too that it's not for a full year's work. It's really like just for that 2 to 4 month period of budget season where the
Right,
BET has numerous meetings within
right.
a month, but for the rest of the year, they're once a month like there. So I think it definitely helps because I mean, as council members, we do have many meetings already, so it could help distribute the work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that Councilmember Hostin's point about um, thinking about this in anticipation of the term, the term changing in the future to a 4 year term, I think we should be anticipating that.
Okay. Councilmember Dillinger?
Yeah, even though I'm not a keen fan of alternates in some of these other committees, this one I think because of what Ann said about the workload, I think it makes sense to have an alternate here just for that reason alone. I think this could be a lot of work for someone, and I think it's good to have a backup. So I like the idea of the alternate.
Okay. Councilmember Buccalo?
Yeah, I agree with the alternate idea because when I think about when this was on the ballot and like, I wasn't part of the charter revision, but when I think about it, it's really about establishing a liaison and improving communication, and between what the BET is doing and what we're doing on the council, and to better just connect the dots and improve kind of communication and making sure we're all aware. So I think in that regard, having an alternate if someone can't make a particular meeting, I think it's less about, obviously the council member can participate on this and but they can't vote. But I really think it's about connecting the dots and just being a voice. So I think having an alternate because of that, to help fill that gap if someone can't attend is helpful. And it's following a similar pattern as other people have brought around this like vice chair approach that we're trying this year.
All right, thank you. So I think the only change that I see, I mean, unless there's other comments or changes, is that maybe it seems like there's a consensus to change it, the term to a 2-year term. Um, there,
Are people okay with the 2-year term as opposed to 1 year or opposed to something else?
Councilmember Goldstein?
Yeah, all I was going to say was yes, and for all the reasons that everyone said on the 2-year term. Um, and I think also one of the benefits of an alternate is it also provides a training structure. Because, not everyone stays on, people leave the council at different times. You always do want to be thinking about who takes the baton after you. And I think that's important. And a lot of times you know, we found ourselves in situations where a council member has had a role and has really so solidified themselves in that role that when a breach, when either they move on professionally or personally or what have you, there's a real gap that needs to be filled. And so instead of it being um, like oh no, what are we going to do? Um, it's nice to have a little bit of a glide path.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? If not, I'll take a motion to move this to public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing. I'm so sorry for this here because it says in the ordinance about how the president of the council shall provide 7 days notice, um, no later than the second meeting in January of each year. But if this ordinance becomes effective before the end of this year, I would imagine we would want to appoint someone and an alternate to this spot before the end of this year.
Sure.
Yes.
So I don't know if we need to. Technically, I don't think we do need to change anything. I think we're just starting a little later. And maybe we would do a resolution when we vote on it with the idea of when the term would end so that it sort of gets on schedule. But I do think that's worth discussing. It's a very short-term issue, but
But I think if it's just technical, if it is a 2-year term, I think the part that it says no city council member should serve the term should serve after the expiration of the term of office. So I think that the 2-year term kind of refresh once the new council comes,
yeah,
just
and I
because,
think that's right. But I just want to be clear on that.
yeah.
Because the
I think you
idea,
can, Josh, I don't disagree. I think if you guys were to do a resolution saying that, this ordinance is being passed, and obviously the people that are being appointed after the date that's in the ordinance. So they're going to be appointed after that date, but they're also only going to be serving, they're going to also be serving for less than a 2-year term because their term as council members are going
right.
to end. I think
Yes.
that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions or comments, I'll take a motion to move that to public. Councilmember Goldstein, thank you.
All right.
And I'll try your minds. All in favor of moving this to public comments?
Nerd.
Thank you. And that passes unanimously. So,
And just for the record, Jalen, this publication of the public notice, the legal notice of public hearing as it pertains to this ordinance, will be going forward as follows. We're going to be posting this legal notice of public hearing in the office of the town clerk and also on the city website. The city website involved will be the Ordinance Committee city webpage. And a copy of the link to the Ordinance Committee city webpage will be available on the agenda so people can access it. It will be available prior to the agenda being posted because we're going to post that legal notice of public hearing on the city website. It will be identified as legal notice of public hearing, and it will have the date of the public hearing, which will be at the next meeting in April. We are doing this pursuant to our charter. And so this is the way we're going to be doing legal notices of public hearing. It's going to be accessible both physically in City Hall, and it's also going to be available digitally on our city website. Additionally, as we go forward in April, starting in April, we are going to post a single sheet of paper, which is going to have the link attached to every agenda to the City of Norwalk Ordinance Committee webpage so that people can automatically click to that site and can identify past agendas, past minutes, upcoming agendas and minutes, as well as the legal notices of public hearing. They'll all be publicly available and probably more available than they were when they were being posted in the paper. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. If anyone has any issues accessing those legal notices of public hearing, they can reach out to me as staff to the Ordinance Committee, but we're going to try and make this as accessible as possible to people. And we're going to provide links on the agendas and also on the city page so people can access this information easily.
Thank you, Attorney Candela, for
Good.
that. And thanks for all the work and making that happen.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to new business. Item A, discuss and vote on Chapter 95, Street and Sidewalks, Section 10, snow and ice removal from sidewalks and driveways, and subsection F, City Code, Section 95-10F. This is something that came up. We know the winter that we are currently in, and we had a fun season with this. And I just want to thank Council Member Winterstrand for really taking the lead on this. And I'm going to pass it over to you.
Vanessa
Thank you.
Valladares from DPW, I believe, is here as well. So thank you, Vanessa,
Yeah.
for coming with us. I know it was a little
And
bit
thank
longer than I thought you had to wait, but thank you for being here.
I wanted to welcome Chief Valladares as well and thank her for being here. And thank you, Brian, for working on this. So this is a snow and ice removal ordinance. It's a clarification of an existing ordinance. As Chair Seed said, it's Section F. It's a language clarification. This is about folks clearing and keeping safe sidewalks and driveways if they're a landowner, if they're a business owner. And the current language was a little vague because it was giving the public this idea that the clearing had to be done within a reasonable time frame. And now we're tightening the language to say that the sidewalks have to be cleared 24 hours after the end of a weather event. So I think it provides transparency, it provides clarity, and just makes the expectation very clear to the public.
We reviewed a number of municipal ordinances from surrounding jurisdictions, and the majority of them were either 24 hours or they got a little bit more complicated where they basically were giving two different paths of, well, if it ends overnight, then you have until 10 a.m., but if it ends before 5 p.m., then you have until 10 p.m., which is very confusing. So we went with the simpler way, which is providing people with direct guidance 24 hours after the cessation of a weather-related event to clear the snow and ice from the sidewalks if you're an abutting landowner.
So any questions, Councilperson Dellinger?
So I have a question about, and maybe for Vanessa. I mean, I brought this up at Public Works, I guess. There's the Norwalk Valley Trail, and there's this nice extension along Riverside Road that never gets plowed in the winter because that was the arrangement. I think Vanessa told me that the Norwalk River Valley Trail Authority was going to take care of. So what happens to them? Do we penalize? Do we penalize them for not? It didn't happen all year this year. Several snowstorms, and it never got plowed. So how would we handle that?
We handle the same. Good evening, everybody. First, thank you for having me. So, Mr. Dellinger, the way that we deal with the NRVT is the same that we deal with some other public trails and parks that we have within the city. So usually we do not really plow them. And on the NRVT, they are the ones that are maintaining that. So as part of the agreement is that they would not gonna plow over the winter.
Yeah,
So,
but would
but
they get fined? Would they be subject to a fine?
no, because this is really specific to sidewalks and that is considered a trail.
I just wondered if we should make it clear that's not part of this ordinance. That's all. I mean, because it seems confusing, and I think people were going to maybe expect some fine for those places that would be exempted.
I think it brings up a point about because this is an existing ordinance, there is a fine structure in place, there's an enforcement structure in place, and it's clearly for sidewalks, but I think that the point that there could be some additional public outreach, an information campaign. I mean, I know around the times that we have storms, we do, the mayor or, we do tend to, and DPW reminds folks that they should be clearing their sidewalks, but I do think that we need to kind of keep educating the public as to what the expectation is and making it clear this is about sidewalks and accessibility and safety and being kind of a good custodian of your property and the community. Um,
It's
Yeah,
just
and this,
I mean, it's just that the sidewalks that we put in, say in West Rocks and Cranberry, look very close to what we have on Riverside Drive. It's very hard to distinguish between the way they look.
Well, we do have a map for that, but I think that also we do have, Brian, under the ordinance, the definition of what is a sidewalk.
Yes.
And then I think that that's why we can always
Mhm.
go back to that. So I
Mm.
think that with that we have that already answer of what is a sidewalk.
Yeah,
Again, the NRVT is really a trail, right? It
right.
is kind of a path and all that. So that's why I think that this is really specific for sidewalks. The footpath, that's where there is a lot of confusion, and
Yeah.
we understand that. What we have been doing is that we're gonna actually have even a map. We just updated this whole map that we're gonna eventually have it online, so people can understand. But we have that already shared with enforcement, so they do not go out and give a hard time or fines to people that is not supposed to be shoveling their footpath because it's a footpath and not a sidewalk.
Well,
Yeah,
as long
just
as it's defined in that way in the ordinance, then I got it. Then it's easy to
Right.
understand.
So I think that we do have a good definition about what is a sidewalk. And so I think that this is really no change on what we are really doing on what is anyone's obligation. Is just more to clarify the time. And the reason why this got triggered was we had a very hard winter, as Mr. Sid pointed out. And one of the issues that we heard about it was to have the kids going to school the next day or a couple of days after, and then people didn't have cleared the sidewalks. So one of the things that came back to us, although we do not enforce, I just want to make it clear, Public Works do not do any enforcement related to private sidewalks clearance for snow. But of course, we do get the complaints when we have to when it's snow removal related. And then one thing that when we went back, we realized that the term was very open. So, what is considered a decent time. So that's why we decided to really just make that more clear. That's pretty much what we are just doing on this one.
Chapter 95, 95-1 under City Code has both definitions of footpath and sidewalk. And, if there is any confusion or people feel that the definition is inadequate to explain what that might be, then we can certainly look at that. But as it pertains to this particular ordinance, the legal requirements are no different now if we change this ordinance and change the language than they were before. It's just giving people more guidance as to how quickly they need to do this. And any fee changes under 90-4 under the fee schedule, which was attached to the agenda, just again for transparency purposes and to show people where it is, would be a discussion item for the Public Works Committee, which I know a couple of you are on, but also eventually would go to City Council. But again, it would potentially taking a look under that fee schedule about what the charges might be for failure to adhere to this ordinance. That could be looked at in the future as well.
Right. And to clarify, what we would be voting on tonight to move to public hearing is the change in language, the clarification of the 24-hour period.
Correct. This ordinance is specifically governed by two state statutes. 7-163A is one of them. The other one is not jumping to me right now. But so all of this is all of what we've required in the past and what would be required in the future has not changed. It's just providing a little bit more specific guidance so people know what they have to deal with. And it's both of all of these sections are governed by two state statutes.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
Yeah.
The beginning of this also says driveways, and I just looked at the definitions and what driveways are we talking about? Are they driveways a problem too? I understand the sidewalk ones.
Anybody want to take that?
I probably can explain. It is the driveway on the chapter that we are looking at about the 24 hours, Mr. Dellinger. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, at the top of the
Let me share it again.
top of the ordinance.
So most likely the reason. So
Is this
most
that,
likely,
Rich?
Yeah, 95-10, snow and ice removal from sidewalks and driveways.
Yeah.
the reason is what we say there is because of the apron, particularly what we call an apron. So
Oh, got it.
you
Yeah,
have a sidewalk that goes into someone's driveway. You
I
know, it
got it.
is an action. So when we do a sidewalk, we usually make the landing, and then most of the time is also a concrete apron that we do. So that's why we call it driveway.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
And then just
this
again,
one?
finally, I know we talked about fiscal impact. This is something again that we've done in the past. We've, required that this be done. We've enforced it in the past. We're just making a change. There's no different requirements that are being made of the city to enforce this. Our enforcement mechanisms are the same. It's just providing residents with a better idea of when and how quickly they have to do this after a storm.
Okay, I have one last question.
Go ahead.
And maybe it's just my recollection. I thought at one point we talked about a different fine for businesses versus people. Am I imagining that? I'm glad not to see it. I'm glad it's just one fine, and the 250 looks fine to me. I thought at one point we had an ordinance that we were talking about that was going to make a difference between a fine, a fine between a homeowner and a commercial.
I believe that the fee schedule is going to be talked about in Public Works.
Yeah, we're going to be discussing that in the Public Works Committee.
Public Works. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, right. So,
Yeah.
Rich, just to answer your question, 7-148, which is the scope of municipal powers, which gives municipalities the right to fine, caps what we can do in most situations to $250. And so the way that our municipality and other municipalities have viewed this is if you fail to clear within the time period, you're in violation. And if you fail to do it the next day, it's a new violation. And so currently, as it stands right now on the fee schedule, it's $250 per day if you fail to do this. So that could be something that the committee takes a look at as to whether you want to keep this at $250 per day, whether you want to lower that per day, or whether you want to take a look at, are we dealing with this on a storm basis, or how do you want to deal with this? That's something that Public Works Committee will discuss. Yeah.
And that'll come out of Public Works.
So again, the fee schedule was attached. Yeah. Fee schedule was attached just to show everyone that there is a fee schedule. and I only showed the page that was relevant for this discussion. And one of the things that we're going to need to do is if changes are made or no changes are made, we do need to identify. And it says right now that all fines are $250 per day in Chapter 95. And if there are changes made to 95-10, then there would need to be a different section for that. But if it's going to stay consistent with the other ones, that it's $250 a day, regardless of who the abutting landowner is, then it can remain as is. But if that's gonna change, then there will have to be some minor changes to the fee schedule. But that should be easy enough.
Thanks.
Thanks for that, Brian. I don't know if
Sure.
anybody had any questions for Councilmember Winterstrand or Chief Alderis. Hearing none, I'll kindly invite Councilmember Winterstrand to make a motion to move this to public hearing.
I move this to public hearing.
All right, thanks a lot. And then I'll try your minds. All in favor of moving this to public hearing? And that passes unanimously.
Great. And again, Jalen, sorry to interrupt. Just
Thanks,
for the
everybody.
record, we're going to be doing the legal notice of public hearing as we discussed earlier. It's going to be posted to the city website and the Ordinance Committee page. It's also going to be placed in the town clerk's office, physically available for any members. If anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me either by telephone or by email. And again, in all future upcoming agendas, we're going to have web links on separate pages so people can access these documents. And the legal notice of public hearing will be posted to the city ordinance page as soon as possible, and it will be clearly identified so that people can access this information. And that's it. Just wanted to let everyone know.
Thank you, Attorney Candela and Chief Alderis, for everything that you've done. And everybody, we're getting ready to end this, but enjoy St. Patrick's Day responsibly. And I'll take one last motion. The motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor? All right, guys, you have a good night, and thanks for hard
Happy
work
St.
tonight.
Patrick's Day, everybody.
Thanks,
Happy St.
everybody.
Patrick's Day.
Everyone.
Night
Bye-bye.
all.